Sweet, we're live. Can everybody hear us okay? Oh, there we go. We're live. Hello, everybody. Howdy. Justin here.
And Zippy from Story and Heart.
Thank you, everybody. We're super stoked to bring together such an incredible panel of filmmakers to answer all of your filmmaking questions.
But before we introduce these amazing storytellers, though none of them need an introduction,
They don't, absolutely not.
we wanted to talk about what it is that we're building with Story and Heart and why we're doing this very hangout tonight.
Yep. We're on a mission to make the world a better place for storytellers and filmmakers. It's as simple as that.
Story and Heart is one part video licensing platform and one big part filmmaking community.
We're building a home for filmmakers, a place for us to learn, to collaborate, and encourage.
And a place where storytellers can find story-driven footage to license for their own stories.
Sweet. We believe that when we work together, it's true, it is sweet. We're all going to have the freedom and support to tell the stories we all love. And it's those stories that will have the biggest impact.
And that's why we're here, to work together, to share our successes, our failures, our fears, and all of our joy too.
So join us for the next hour and a half as we pick the brains of some fellow filmmakers who have no doubt been in your shoes before.
We're going to answer your questions, we're going to critique your films, and at the end of it all, we're going to give away some pretty sweet swag.
Swag and filmmaking gear, for sure. We just want to take a quick second and say the whole idea of this event is about building community and bringing people together. One way we hope to do that right now is by sharing on social. So if you hear anything that inspires you, that strikes a chord you just love, make sure you share it, Facebook, Twitter, Google+, whatever social network you use, and hashtag Hangout with Heart.
And if there's room, @reply Story and Heart.
Appreciate that. And we have something very, very special for the person with the most creative share between now and the next 3 days. So it's not something you have to do during the Hangout because we do not want you guys to miss what we've got cooked up for you. But over the next 3 days, if you've got a really unique share on social, we've got something really cool.
So get creative.
Yep.
So who are these friendly faces that are going to be joining us tonight?
Yeah, I believe they're below. If you look, we've got some filmmakers down there. So who are they? Up first, we have Dana and Dan from Gnarly Bay.
Patrick and Joyce from Stillmotion.
No, we got Dana and Dan. Can you come up and say hi?
Hi guys.
Hello, hello. How you doing?
What's up? We got Patrick and Joyce from Stillmotion, and I have no idea where these guys are now because they just got on a plane.
Conference room in
Yeah.
LA.
Hey guys.
I believe your footage or your video screen looks the worst.
Yes.
We agree.
We're ashamed.
Are you? You said you're ashamed?
Yeah.
We are.
We have overhead fluorescent lighting. Awesome.
Yeah. Just want to point it out. Okay.
We have Matt Bruce from Capture Studios in snowy Minneapolis.
Hello.
Is it still snowy there, bud?
Yes, it is. It snowed today.
Oh no, I think it was like 80 in Portland today.
Yeah, it's gorgeous here.
Joey and Aaron from Film Lab Creative in Houston.
Joe Simon from The Delivery Men, who is usually in Austin, but I believe he is in Budapest.
Yes, in Budapest at the moment. It's quite dark outside.
So what time is it?
3 a.m.
Thank you very much.
So
Thank
I
you.
just woke up. I did half a night of sleep, and I just woke up, and I'll do another half in a little bit. So.
We appreciate you.
Hello. Yeah, for sure.
Hello, Julianne.
Cheers. How you doing?
Your beautiful studio in Houston.
Sure.
And Ryan Booth from Cereal Box Presents.
How's it going?
In the ominous cave. Are you in a
Yeah, exactly. I'm in my dark cave that is hiding my messy office.
Okay, I was going to say you're in your coloring room. You know, you that music video, so. And we got Vincent Laforet, directing Motion Tour, because I think that launches in the next couple of days.
Yeah, it just launches next week.
Well, Joe is here, and we're in Budapest. Where are you right now, Vince?
I'm in sunny California, in LA, at Manhattan Beach.
Okay, cool. I thought you were in Hawaii, but I guess you made your way back to
It's 87 today, might as well be.
Okay, so we are done with our greetings. Everybody's been introduced. We're super excited to just dive into these questions because that's why everybody's here.
Let's get down to business.
So, first question we got from Carlos in Texas. And these are going to be really quick. The first 4 questions we want just really quick, single word or single sentence answers from our panelists. It's going to be really quick. Film school or no film school? Who's gone to film school? Has anybody gone to film school?
No school for me.
Not sort of film school.
Film school's about the people you meet, not about what you learn there.
There we go. I like it. So we have not very many people from film school. Cool. Okay.
Dave asks, what's the most important thing to include on a demo reel? Name one thing, go.
Video footage.
Okay.
I would say keep it short.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Something memorable.
I'd say just the bacon, the tastiest, crunchiest, juiciest stuff you got.
Just make sure there's a picture of you with either thick black glasses, a big beard, just so you fit in on the part, and you're good.
I believe nothing important.
I would say I would actually say it's pretty important to put in what you want to get back. I mean, a lot of people have we have all sorts of content, but if you want to do a certain type of video, you got to find that content and slip it into your reel in order to do that kind of work. That's kind of important. So we have a lot of stuff that we do that we would never put in a reel. Yeah, it's just a thought.
No, that's exactly true. There's so many people who, I look at to hire for a variety of things, and they show you the work that they do, and you know what they want to do, and you understand that. But this business is not about giving people their big break. It's about seeing that they can do something and saying reproduce that, because there's a lot of money and energy and resources on the line. And the sad reality is it's not a business about taking big risks because of the amount of resources at hand that are involved. People want to see that you can do something before they hire you to do it again.
Yep.
Definitely.
Patrick, I think you have a saying that you were on with Storytelling with Heart, and specifically was about your reel.
I'm not really sure, but what I would say is definitely make sure that you're communicating who you are, not just what you do. And making sure you're really expressing what you're about. And I think it can be so easy just to be drawn to the amazing shots, but it's a challenge to try and also communicate your unique perspective through the collection of shots.
Oh, sweet. On to the next one. Okay, so we got a question for Paul in here. Does anybody have a preference for artificial or ambient light? Ryan, what do you think?
I think some of the best, like, photojournalists, some of my biggest inspirations are kind of old school photojournalists, and I think the best photojournalists wouldn't call it ambient light. They are they're shooting at a certain time in a certain way in a certain direction, and all of a sudden you've got 4 or 5 sources. So I think for me, the transition into filmmaking, I had to stop thinking about it as ambient light and really think about the direction. Where is the light coming from? And so then if you're in a position to build that, then great. If you're in a position and it looks incredible, then why does it look incredible? It's usually because there's a bunch of different sources, and it's coming from a bunch of different directions. So they're the same thing in my mind.
Anybody else have any thoughts?
I think you do one or the other. Everything in between is mediocre. You either make it look like it's not lit. I don't care how you do it. It might be ambient light or what we call practical light. Or it could be something that you really like to death. I think everything in between to me is just kind of a miss.
Yeah, I go, it either looks natural or it looks very stylized.
Yeah.
And for me personally, I like naturally lit stuff as much as I can. This is more real world, and you're able to mimic practical sources, even if it's not actually real world lighting.
Cool. Okay, next question.
Leslie from Vancouver asks, what is your greatest source of visual inspiration that aren't actually films or videos?
Dana.
He wasn't listening.
You were breaking up.
You list the visual inspiration that aren't actually films or videos.
Where are you guys inspired that you're not seeing on Vimeo or anything like that?
What inspires us besides music? Is that?
Besides films or videos?
Besides films or videos.
Oh, besides films or videos.
Send me some of your beer.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think, obviously, I think people themselves can be inspiring, and travel obviously is huge. I think getting out of your hometown and seeing the world and I don't know, like you very cliche, like stepping out of your comfort zone and all that. I mean, getting out there and seeing the world is extremely inspiring, and I feel like every time I come back from a trip or we come back from a trip, we're always jazzed up, and it's just like creative juices are just flowing. So that's got to be number one, I would think. I don't know.
Joey?
I think for me, I love graphic design. I started
when I started doing art, I was drawing, and I got into graphic design and got into video from there. So for me, visual design is very inspiring to me. Lines and perspective and typography and that sort of thing.
Which is why we worship Wes Anderson to some degree.
The symmetry, right? Because everything is perfectly symmetrical. Matt.
I'd say I'm actually inspired a lot by photographers. I kind of got into the game after having followed a lot of photographers' work, and for me it always translated better to video for some reason. I liked motion, I liked emotion, I liked process and progress, but a lot of my inspiration definitely comes from photographers that I followed and really kind of admired.
Yeah, you have a couple of those names offhand?
Offhand, a couple locals, actually, a couple good friends of mine. One's name is Spencer Combs. He actually kind of introduced me to a lot of weddings when I started shooting. And then another local, kind of a younger up-and-coming guy who kind of helped me in my transition to commercial work. His name's Colin Hughes. And just both incredible doc-style shooters on the still side of things, and really kind of helped me develop on the motion side.
Cool. And then Ryan, what about you? Where do you get inspired?
Actually, there's a really great fine art Museum of Fine Arts in Houston that's free every Thursday, and if I'm like stuck on something, a lot of times I'll go just wander around because it's a perfect size where you can kind of get a bunch of different kind of styles of art, and I think there's something really cool about seeing something that's several hundred years old that people spent years and years and years making, and the lighting's beautiful, the composition's beautiful, and you can kind of get this really great kind of hit basically of inspiration and seeing all this kind of these master works in one place. So I think paintings and museums for me are the most kind of inspiring.
Cool. Okay, we got a question from Jerry in Garden Grove. How did you find your unique voice? And specifically, do you remember when you found it? Your own shooting style or your way of editing? Just something that you latched onto with your filmmaking voice. Joyce.
How do you find your unique voice?
Unique voice. I think a lot of it has to do with just listening for what you want to do and what you want to say, and then using that to just shape the projects that come in. And I don't know if I remember specifically if there was a one moment where that happened for me, but I think it's over a period of time, and it's definitely through collaboration with everybody on the team and working with people outside of our team too.
Patrick, would you say that we each have, like, all the Stillmotion people have their unique voice, but then there's also a unique voice at Stillmotion, or is there just a unique voice at Stillmotion?
Yeah, I mean, I think for us it's kind of like words, or coming up with your filter of how you're telling a story. Our studio has a collective voice and a style and stories that we're drawn to, yet each one of us has our own voice within that, and I think it's that rhythm between our individual voices and how it fits what we do as a group that makes us such a strong team, and makes it so exciting to collaborate.
Joe, what about you? When did you find your unique voice?
Did you say Joe?
I said Joe.
Oh, I think it's something that you just discover after doing enough different kind of projects. You discover what your passion really becomes, and when you shoot, if it's that or if it's directing or editing, you get really excited when you see that work, and it really reignites the fire within you. And I think that's when you start to realize what your style is what is really you're drawn to that you actually create, versus what you're like, it's kind of okay, I think once you discover, you just know that it's that.
Cool. Dan?
Unique voice? I don't know. I guess it's, I think exactly what Joe said. I think a little bit what Joyce said. I don't think there was a moment. I think it's just kind of over the years you kind of leave things behind as things like, I think at some point we, decided that we were never going to shoot green screen again or something like that. Like we're like, that's not in our, that's not going to be part of the equation. That's not what we want to do, and it kind of just starts forming the way that we express how we express it, and all that sort of stuff. So I think it's just a building process. I don't know if we found the voice yet. We're still looking.
Do we put up our hand if we want to say something, or do we just wait?
Pipe up when you're done. Go ahead, Patrick.
I think that a lot of it is, none of us got into this because we wanted to be a tripod. And I think so often when we start off by doing what we're told, and we go where we're supposed to, and we think what we're supposed to shoot. And I think that we really start finding our voice when we're reflective, and we find what it is we're drawn through experience, through getting out there, through really thinking about what it is we connect to. But we start going after the stories that we want to tell, and stop worrying about necessarily what we're being told we have to do every single time. And I know for us, one of the biggest moments that we had in finding our voice was actually taking on a pro bono film in old school and just going out and saying we're going to make this completely ourselves the way that we want, and doing that story has more solidified who we are and what we're about than any other piece we've ever done.
I think we timed that perfectly because the next question from Philip.
Wait a minute.
Was there a big job or event that took your career to the next level? So I think that ties in perfectly to what you just said, Patrick. Does anybody else want to chime in on a specific job or person?
Well, hold on a second.
I like it.
I think I just found it. My voice. No, I was just there are a lot of instances. I had this whole joke set up. It just didn't work. I was gonna tell you I just found my voice. I don't know that it happens. We all have a voice. It's a matter of finding a way to follow it. And back to your previous question, go see performance art. I mean, going to the theater for me is so enriching. To step away from this 4-squared screen, and remembering whether it's at the theater or at the ballet that it's all about making people feel something at the end of the day. No one really cares about parallax or coverage or whatever it is that we do, or in photography, what lens you choose, what resolution you shoot at. It really doesn't matter, and you just got to continuously remind yourself that. And I also like the fact that when I asked the guys about the beer, you both lifted your glasses simultaneously, Justin and Zippy, right on cue. So I'll just call you out on that.
Just water.
Okay, Josh from Tasmania asks, with so many stories waiting to be discovered, what is your process to discover them, and how do you look for the one, the story that is right for you to tell? Joyce.
Oh, that's a big one. I think you gotta have to look at your team or yourself first and see what stories you're attracted to, and then listen for them. Keep an eye out for them, and I think we just met with somebody today that story that we just came across. We don't know if we're going to pursue it or not, but I think it's part of keeping up that open mind and exploring what your options are.
How about you, Aaron?
Yeah, I think it kind of goes back to what we touched on with the whole demo reel. With what you put out there, those stories sometimes will find you because of what you're actually putting out there. So I think that's why it's so necessary to be selective, that everything that you are showing and putting your name on really represents the stories you want to tell, because those stories will kind of start to find you. For us, it's like you hear it and your heart just kind of clicks with it, and you're like, yeah, we have a vision for this, and we feel like it's something that not only we could create, but it would have life, in it, and how we can create it.
Yeah, totally. Brian?
I agree. That's a tough question. I think for me, I think just being interested in people. I love to have conversations with people wherever I go, and I think kind of being open and being interested and curious in all facets, and reading a bunch, and kind of being open to the people that you meet, and kind of, as a storyteller, you have to be willing to follow rabbit trails, so to speak. So I think it's kind of always keeping your eyes open is how I've kind of stumbled upon a bunch of stuff that I never would have known I was looking for. So, I've got a story in my back pocket that I want to do a feature one day. I know I already know what the story is, but it will likely be years and years and years and years before it's done. But I feel that strongly about it, and I think, that happens on a macro and a micro level. But when you kind of get that feeling inside, man, you got to stick with it. That's it.
How about you, Matt?
I'd say that if a story strikes a chord and you're willing to do it for free, and or even go as far as putting some of your own resources towards it, that could be a sign that it's the one. I also think that it's not always about the story, but it's a lot of time about the teller. And so I think we get dragged into a couple stories that you kind of look at as a dead end. But if you can figure out a way to bring your process and bring your experience, your past into it, and shape it in a way that it should be and deserve to be shaped, I think any story can be told really well. So.
Joe, Simon in Budapest, are you still awake?
I'm here. I'm alive. I think there's, like everybody said, there's a lot of stories. Personally, for me, it's a lot of what we do is more, if it's on the wedding side, it's more of the right people to tell their story. It's looking for those right, interesting people. And on the commercial side, it's very similar. We want to help find brands that have common interests and something that we find worth telling. And then my biggest things I'm currently looking for just personal things that I can work on that I'm really interested in doing, and that's just an ongoing process of, again, finding the voice of where I really want to go and what I want to do, and finding those unique things. So
even on the commercial side, you try to always choose stories that you feel like you're going to connect with.
Yes, because there's a lot of commercial stuff that just sucks and it's just money, and that's about it. And then you kind of want to strangle both the client and yourself by the time you're done. And there's the ones that are actually you love and you care about the project even when you get to the end of it, when you're tired of looking at the edit for about 5,000 times. So I think that's the kind of stuff that I enjoy much more doing.
Yeah, I'd agree. So we've got the same question from multiple people, and so Lee in Baltimore and Lewis from Houston are asking, as you guys have grown as filmmakers and faced the dilemma of equally balancing craft and family, how do you make the jump from making filmmaking a hobby to a family sustainable career?
Not everybody at once.
Yeah.
I can answer that. I have 3 boys and a wife that likes me home more than traveling. But I think when you first start, it's a process. I mean, I remember when I first started, I was booking a lot of jobs, but I had a full-time job. When I got home at night, I was editing. I was shooting at night. I was taking lunch breaks, long lunch breaks, to meet with potential clients. I was shooting on Saturday. I was shooting on Sunday, and there was probably 4 years of my life that I did that. And what I realized is I had to make a decision of what my priorities were. And if my priority was family, I needed to charge enough money to make it sustainable so that I could be there for the loved ones and not just be spread too thin and working myself to death for, at the end of the year I wasn't even profitable, and everyone was kind of mad at me. But Aaron just took over sales, and so he's much better at that than I am. But yeah, I think a lot of it is just making priorities, and if family is priority and having that balance, then you just have to make that decision. Clients will want you to work 8 days a week if they could, and I think for me it's important to say, you know what, no, it's a great paying gig and it's a good opportunity, but I would rather be home.
How about you, Matt?
It's a tough one. I mean, I kind of started out before I had little ones, and so for me it was more of a, is this something that I can make work while my wife makes a decent wage? And fortunately, through things like weddings and kind of whatever work I could get my hands on, it did get to that point where I looked at what I was making in my hobby hours and in my 2 a.m. edits and stuff like that versus what I was making from 9 to 5, and it made financial sense. And then, as things have grown, I've been able to add some team members to what we're doing and, help me live my life as a family man and not have to be on the road, 52 weeks a year like some do. And so, yeah, I think it's, again, striking a balance. That's a really important thing, and setting your priorities as well. I think that was great advice.
Ryan, what about you, having just had a second baby?
Yeah, I have an 11-day-old baby in the other room, and I did a 16-hour day yesterday on a music video that, man, it was like, and then came home and like was kind of basically up all night doing the newborn thing. So, I don't know. I mean, I think that my biggest piece of advice would be just don't be scared of a day job. Like it's not a statement about you as like an artist. You can't if you have a day job, you can't hack it. I think there's a lot of wisdom in kind of relieving pressure so that you can find those things and do the kind of have a sense of like, man, I need to take this project and it not be like this crushing pressure of like I have to say yes to every gig. I mean that, and just be willing to work a lot. I mean there will be late nights, there will be a lot of work, especially at the beginning, but you know, everything's hardest when you start, like, so just be willing to work hard.
It's not just in the beginning; it's always. You know, when
Well,
Joey said an 8-hour week, it didn't even catch me. I was like, that's short, and I was like, oh, week, because an 8-hour day for me is like unheard of. And you know, I think it's all about balance, and balance is something you choose. It's something that happens magically. You know, I'm gonna get off a little bit early off the Google Hangout because it's my daughter's 5th birthday. And that's a choice that I make in the same way that you have to make choices every day and whether or not to go back out and shoot this other piece of footage or to, you know, go on this trip or take this job. And there's no magic answer. It's really a choice that you make, and you find that balance for yourself, and you'll find that if you do too much work, your family and personal life is going to suck and your friends won't know you, and you'll have a great reel, or you can maybe find a little more balance. And the older I've gotten, the more I've realized that, you know, it's no film, no piece of video or still image you'll ever shoot will make up for a really nice experience in life with real people and family and friends. That's my opinion anyways.
Yeah. Great. So we have a follow-up question that's actually really interesting coming from that. It's how do you make time, and this is from Robert in Dallas, how do you make time for personal projects when A, you have your business, B, you have your family, you have your personal projects? Like, how do you find that balance to take on projects, okay, that, but just fulfill something inside you that needs to be fulfilled?
You find, for me, it's I'll just, you know, I have extra time here and there, and that's when I'll do that stuff. Or I'll set aside some time. Like I came out to Budapest 3 days early with the idea that I would create something for myself and to learn something, a new technique. And I think that you have to schedule it in.
So I've always taken exception to this idea that there are personal projects and work projects, and I understand that there are jobs that pay the bills.
Yeah.
But I've always been like creatively against that, to say that for my personal projects I'm going to do this, but for my creative products or for my clients I'm not. And then as I got more and more in the commercial world, that's probably because I was a photographer and I had to shoot stuff that was not necessarily as interesting or there was more influence. I do think as I've evolved that it is important to find stuff that you just do for yourself without anyone telling you how you shoot it or what you shoot or etc. So again, you got to find a balance between the two.
Yeah. Sorry, I cut you off right when you were talking about Budapest, because I know you just got your GH4.
Oh, what? Oh, yeah. No, I mean, I was already planning to do something when I was here. I just didn't know what, and things kind of, you know, fell together. But I think learning is always a continuing process, and for me, my personal projects are always a learning process, and I'm always trying to do something that is going to help me learn, whether it be a storytelling aspect or a technical aspect or something. And so I was like, you know, I just want to figure out how to do this hyperlapse thing just for my own personal entertainment. So I just came here and I like landscapes and architecture. And so for me, that's kind of my inspiration. And so I just explore places and look for that.
Yeah.
Cool. So next question from Australia. If you could give one piece of business advice to your past self, a younger version of yourself, who's just starting out in filmmaking, what would it be?
Run.
One advice for the younger self? Yeah.
Vince, you got a lighting change over there?
I felt so envious of Ryan's lighting. I was staring at lighting. I was like, you know, I can play with the shadow. I can do this. I can do this too. Look, man, no light.
Look.
Ambient? Or what is that?
That's so good.
Yeah.
No, I've got a bunch of 18Ks outside on standby at all times.
Okay, Dana or Dan, one piece of advice you could give your younger self.
Younger self.
I think looking back when we were kind of first starting out, I mean, first of all, I just kind of hints on the question that was asked a little bit ago, is like the transition from doing it as a hobby to a career. I think that's a scary step, or extremely scary step for most people. And I think I would just be like, you know, say screw it and dive in sooner. Like, don't be afraid to take that risk, because it feels like a risk, you know, try to do a career that's actually going to pay bills, and it doesn't seem believable. I mean, when we were first starting out, we never would have imagined to be where we are today. Like, we didn't think it was even really possible, and we were just, yeah, let's do this, you know? So I would say that, and then on a more business side, I would say, I think a huge bit of advice is something that we learned was networking. Networking's huge, and networking specifically with agencies. If you're looking to make money in the commercial side of things, once we started making contacts with different agencies throughout the country, I feel like it kind of opened up all sorts of doors as far as income flowing in and things like that, and jobs that actually paid bills.
Yeah, we were when we first started out, we were traveling around to different companies. Like we'd look at on TV and we'd be like, that car commercial sucks. Let's go visit those car people. And we had this tape, this VHS tape, and we had this velvet pillow inside of a briefcase. And we went to the car dealerships and we were like, this is what you need. and we pretty quickly figured out that, like, you shouldn't go to the car dealership or to the the shoe store or whatever it might be. You should go to the agency or try to make an agency contact or something like that. Somebody that has multiple clients, you know. So that's when really things started happening for us, was when we brought our velvet pillow to the agencies.
Well, that's funny too, because we realized that, you know, we can make films and videos, and we can tell stories and create emotions. You know, we're not salesmen, and I think we learned that quickly when we first started out. We were working out of, like, my parents' house, and we were doing calls, and we'd, like, cold call people and be like, oh, hey, you video, you need, and then, like, we just hang up and start giggling.
Lost that one.
No one got away. So I think we realized that let other people do the selling for you. You know, put your work out there, let other people sell you, and then do what you're good at, basically. Kind of, I don't know.
Yeah. Joyce.
I think a lot of it just has to do with jumping off the ledge and getting out there and just doing it. I think it's really easy to spend a lot of time, watching other people's clips or going to workshops or reading forums, but not actually getting it out there and just shooting and having fun and meeting people. And that's a big part of learning and growing and making mistakes. And so I think if I were to look back and tell myself something, it would be to do that more and do it more often and kind of shorten that cycle, that loop of making mistakes and learning and iterating that.
I think a lot of people make a mistake that they think they have to let go of their day job to do this job. And they kind of believe that if they let go of their full-time employment, that suddenly they're going to be a filmmaker. And the truth is, keep that stable employment and save up for a month or two or a week once a year and do your film. And then see, once you've had a chance to practice your craft a little bit, if you can take it to the next level. But this whole mentality of just pulling the ripcord and saying, I'm done with corporate America and I'm going to become a filmmaker overnight is a bit reckless, especially when people think that they can buy a camera and shoot 18K and have a slider and a jib and they're the next Scorsese. The reality is this stuff takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of time to develop stories. It takes a lot of time to find the right teams and execute them in post. And in many ways, if you could find a part-time job or a freelance job that's sustaining and take a third to half of your time to do this, that's the ideal formula, I think.
Yeah.
Because you're going to find yourself chasing so many crappy jobs to pay the bills that you almost slow yourself down. That's just my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, it ties in perfectly again to the next question, which I think if you want to keep elaborating on that, Vincent. Joe from Atlanta asks, in your life, how much of what you do is actually filmmaking versus running a business?
Versus running the business? I'd say 1% filmmaking and 99% running the business, meeting people, schmoozing. I had a lunch with a producer today who did, let's see, China Beach, West Wing, ER, and now he's on Shameless. Tonight I'm meeting with my agents from London and here, and that's kind of what I have to do, and I actually enjoy these meetings a lot, but it's so much about what I do that when I actually get on set, it's like, holy crap, I'm actually shooting. And what the hell is going on? Like, what happened? Someone was screwed up somewhere, and they let me on set. So that's a dark secret no one tells you, is that the percentage of time you spend on set is probably close to 1% of your time. Especially the more you do bigger budget stuff. But I'll spend 2 months prepping for a commercial and shoot for 2 days. So sometimes I'm lucky to shoot for 4 days, and sometimes it's 1 day. And just keep that in mind, which is why I say to people, don't throw away your stable employment, because you really will end up chasing crappy stuff just to pay the bills. Keep your day job. Let those of us on the screen here work and take our jobs away from you, and we'll all be very happy and the better for it.
Matt, you were shaking your head there. Do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I'd say if I were to answer the previous question, what I would have told little Matt would have been to find somebody who knows how to run a business, and don't feel like you have to do everything on your own, out of the box. And I did jump. I took the leap without having anything saved, and just kind of didn't do what Vincent was saying we should do. But at the same time, had I found somebody that knew a lot about business right away, it probably would have helped me out quite a bit. And now I would say that I get to shoot a lot more than I did when I was starting out, because I do have somebody that runs the business side of what we do. And I've even helped find somebody who can run the post-production side of what we do. I love to shoot. I love to be in camera. I love to be a visionary and be thinking up new things. And so surrounding yourself with other people that do those things better than you do, it's okay to admit that you're not as good at business as this guy, or you're not quite the editor that this guy or this girl is. I have a fly in my face, sorry. So I think just kind of, being able to humble yourself every once in a while, realize your weaknesses, and fill them with somebody who's better than you. Find somebody who's better than you at something and let them do that thing.
That's the next question from Natalie and Pocono. Is how do you build a team of a secure team of like-minded professionals in a freelancer's world? So Matt, you just give your advice is find someone who's better at you at things you don't want to do. What about Joey? How did you build Film Lab Creative?
A lot of people will tell you don't hire your friends, but that's exactly what I did. I just wanted to surround myself with people that it wasn't really even about skill, but it was more about personality. And once I started delegating and I started realizing, it doesn't have to be the Joey show. Realistically, like, I'm not that good at a lot of stuff. And letting other people rise to the top and let them take the credit, and just give people opportunities to do what they're passionate about and support that. And I would say make it a team effort and not a solo show. And that's what's worked for us. And, it's not perfect, but I'm always trying to find out how the team feels about what they do and what they love and what they don't love and what they would like to do. And I spend a lot of time thinking and trying to create opportunities where people can really feel like this is a place where they can grow in their abilities and do what they love.
We do out of 8 people that are on our staff, basically, we pretty often will just kind of sit down and say, hey, what are you doing? Like, do you love what you're doing? Is there something that, even like today, we were kind of shifting some things because it was like there's workloads on certain people that like they just don't enjoy doing, or it's not in their skill set. That happens pretty often. Like connected to the last question, like a lot of the business stuff, like Joey shifted to me, so he pretty much like 100% is production or post-production. He's editing. He doesn't have to worry about like the business side of it, so he's able to dive straight into that. I think it works to balance and just kind of like communicate with everyone and find their strengths. Kind of like what Matt was saying. Like just be willing to find people that are like way better at you at something else and just give them the reins on that thing.
Patrick?
I think it's so much of it is not trying to find people that have certain skill sets, but instead trying to find people that have the right attitudes and the right approach. I think so much of filmmaking is how we attack things, how we see things, how we approach problems, the experiences we create. And I think that if you were to put yourself on set and have something terrible go wrong, you're going to want somebody who is creative and resourceful and optimistic. And I think it's about thinking about those approaches and trying to find people that, for so many of us, there isn't that strong balance. And so it's who do you really want to spend that time with? Who you're going to have fun to collaborate with, and who's really going to push you in what you do, all at the same time having a very similar approach, more so than at the beginning when we would really hire for skill set. We would look for somebody who could, light a solid interview and could really work with a Steadicam well or something like that. And what we learned, and the people that have been with us for the longest and made the most impact on our team, have been those that have a really solid approach.
So then, how do you guys, after you've built your team, how do you go about dealing with creative differences amongst your team members, the people that you have on your team?
And this doesn't necessarily mean to just full-time team. I think this could apply just to on-set teams, teams you assemble. Ryan, how do you deal with creative differences on set?
I might actually go back and just follow up on that if you don't mind. So I do a music project called Serial Box Presents, and it is at this point we've had like 75 or 80 people work on this project, and so it started out as a personal project where we just got people together and started doing, it was a way for me to learn filmmaking basically, and so I had started inviting friends in, and the thing I learned from it, which I did not start out knowing, was that the most important thing about building a team was enabling them to feel like when it's all said and done that they can go, man, that was the thing. There was that thing that I contributed, that I did, that if I hadn't been involved, then that thing wouldn't have happened. And being very intentional and specific about kind of giving everyone kind of a sense of ownership over the projects that you are having your teams work on. And that's been a huge lesson for me, kind of moving into where I'm having to build crews when I go places, especially places I've never been before. And so I find that, really kind of giving people that sense of ownership has been the most critical thing in terms of really building a team and not just hiring a bunch of people to work on something. So
if there is conflict on set, or if you have creative differences, like how have you dealt with that in the past?
I think a huge majority of the creative differences, the conflict, and all that kind of stuff is about picking the right group of people, and a lot of it can be headed off before you get to set, basically. So when you're shooting, I typically don't have these kind of big blow-up creative differences because we've tried to kind of like put everything on the table and head off as many of them kind of as we've been moving towards production. So to be honest with you, I don't have an example of like a big creative difference problem on set at this point, which I feel really fortunate about.
Yeah. Joe, how have you dealt with creative differences amongst you?
I think I'm kind of in the same boat as Ryan in the sense I really haven't had any kind of big issues with that. I tend to work with people. Well, first I have a team that's really great, and we work together a lot, and so we know how each of us do our specific jobs, and we all are really great at doing those. And so for us, it works really well. But sometimes randomly I'll work with someone, and we might have like a creative difference, nothing crazy, but it's just explaining what is the vision of this project and what are we trying to accomplish, and is what they're doing or I'm doing taking away from that. And if it is, let's refocus and get back on track on what we're supposed to be doing. I think, it's just handling it in an above-the-board manner where you're not just like, you suck, what are you doing? Like, don't do it that way, This is our goal. Let's refocus back to this.
Personally, I found that, abuse of power, personal attacks, and screaming at people is oddly effective on set. And when you really don't agree with someone, you just ignore them and just walk right through them like they're not there. And you send them on an errand. You go ask them to find a set of tea bags or tea stops or something. No, I mean the truth is it's all about respect and setting realistic expectations. If you're by yourself or with 3 people and you want to pull off a Scorsese shot, you're setting yourself up for failure. And this is a job of ridiculous egos. You should come live where I live in LA. It's out of control. Everybody and their mother is a director and a filmmaker and an agent. And the reality is you have to manage those egos. It's part of the job. And you have to find a way to get people enthused and to get them, draw the best out of them while also keeping your expectations realistic. And so much of this is about management and managing egos and expectations. And treating people with kindness, but not too much kindness. That's the hard part you learn as a director, at least, is that you're there to be kind but firm and have a direction. You're not there to be people's friends. And ultimately, if you can be friends, that's the ultimate goal, because no one likes having a bad time. But what's almost worse is being too nice and compromising too much on important things that are going to hurt everyone in the end.
Great. So resistance, creative blocks, writing blocks, procrastination, having some sort of assignment or project that you're just not that excited about. These are things that shooters deal with all the time. How do you guys go about overcoming that?
Dan and Dana drank a lot of beer, apparently.
Yeah.
Ping pong, beer.
Yeah. All good stuff. I think like with writing or editing or anything along those lines, I think it's good to, or for me personally, I think everyone has something that works for them, but for me personally, I like to step away from it. Because I think if you put too much pressure and you try too hard, it's just I don't know, sometimes that just makes things worse. I like to kind of just relax, step away from it, and just throw it in the subconscious, and then, next morning in the shower or waking up, or it's some random moment, it's going to come back in your subconscious and be like, oh, damn, you'll hear a song on the radio or something that's just and it sparks, So I think you got to have a kind of a relaxed approach, maybe.
Yeah.
I don't know what I do.
Lots of good ideas come in the shower.
Yeah.
That's a spot. But as far as creative blocks, and was some of that? Were you asking also about like dealing with bad creative or that sort of stuff? That's
blocks which happen, but there's also things just like procrastination or
just not being excited about something.
Not super stoked about a project that you have upcoming. You guys have already answered a little bit the idea of just get out there and do something else, and maybe that will bring some inspiration that you hadn't thought of. But I think just as artists, we definitely deal with a lot of potential restraints.
Yeah.
Do you have any thoughts?
I think Grant often says that creativity is born out of constraint, and I think that so often we get uninspired, we get burnt out, and we have such a hard time taking things on because they can seem so big. And I think creating those constraints, breaking it down, making it smaller. For me, if I have to get a blog post out and I'm just having a really hard time writing it, I'm just going to work on the hook, just the intro. And I find that when I break it down and give myself a small challenge in a small amount of time, creativity comes out of that, and you naturally get inspired by what you're creating, and it pulls you through the rest of it. And so I think the biggest thing would be creating those constraints, making it smaller, and just kind of diving in something that's much more manageable for yourself.
Yeah, that's great. Patrick, while I have you, the next question is from Tim from Stanfield, which I think is relevant to having just finished Stand With Me, Stillmotion's first feature-length doc. When someone critiques one of your projects, how do you collaborate and take or entertain their thoughts, and how much do you stick to your vision if you're the director or the DP?
I think that we had to go through that a lot in making Stand With Me and putting it out there in the world, having a film that explores some really tough stuff. And we had a couple features on No Film School. We got totally hammered. The comments and the criticism that we were taking. I think it's hard for any artist, but to get stuff that is hard to read. I think your challenge is to always try and see what is there and to try and listen to it as open a mind as possible. And I think that for us, it's going back to being very confident in your underlying intention, what this was actually about. And I think that so often, I mean, every one of us here would approach a documentary in a completely different way on the exact same subject. It doesn't make any of them worse or better. It means that we each have a different vision and a different intent that we're trying to get across. So for me, it's always about trying to understand what our intent is, being very confident in that, and understanding what it is that their suggestion or their idea is driving towards. And I think we can get on that same page. You can get a lot of, I mean, we've got so much value in focus groups tearing apart our film and, you know, really sending us back to the drawing board. It was making sure that it was pushing it to a better place of what that original vision and how, going back to what Vincent talked about at the beginning, how we actually wanted people to feel, what we wanted to leave them with, and really letting that be our guiding light.
Anybody else have any thoughts on that one?
I tend to use criticism as a like I'll have I'll let it be kind of like a radar. I may have things in the back of my mind that I feel like maybe things aren't working, and when kind of criticism tends to line up with that little feeling I've had, then I really pay attention because I feel like, you know, it's exactly what Patrick just said, but I feel like you have to kind of discard a lot of the stuff that you know. They say all advice is autobiographical. I think the same is with critique of your work. You know, really what people are saying is this is what I would do. And so, you know, the trick is to kind of take what they're saying and kind of use, you know, throw away a lot of the, like, stuff, and really those places where it connects, where you feel like, man, there wasn't I completely agree something wasn't quite working, then those are the places where you really kind of pay attention. At least that's what I do.
Okay, so we have a couple more questions before we're going to get into the film critiques. A couple of people have already talked about this idea as far as the percentage of, you know, on-set versus pre-pro. But Ali from Houston asks, when planning on a project, how much or how do you prepare yourself for the project while preventing, you know, paralysis by analysis? So how do you still be creative, knowing that you have a bunch of, you know, analyzing to do while you're doing pre-pro? Joyce?
Having a plan never... Did you ask someone in specific? Sorry.
Oh, no, Vince, go ahead.
Having a plan never hurt anyone, and you shouldn't overthink things. I mean, I just spent 2 or 3 months looking at 100 of my favorite films, and you realize so many of the decisions are made that are actually pretty logical and basic, that we call masterpieces now. And you hear the behind-the-scenes stuff or the director's commentary, and you look back at your favorite scenes and realize they were absolutely happenstance because the light... you know, someone would say, why did you frame it this way with the background? And you had all these layers of information, and the director will say, because on the left was a modern building, and on the right was an ice cream truck, and I had to frame it this way. It wasn't this divine inspiration. It was just that that's what you could shoot. And don't make it too complicated. Just go out and do it. But that being said, there's no excuse for showing up on set without a very clear plan. I mean, I obsessively prepare for this stuff. And then I will go to the actors and say, what do you feel in this scene? And if they come up with something that's better or different, I'll see if it cuts with what I'm trying to do overall and go with it. Because more often than not, they're right. But when they come back to you and say, I don't know, you better have a plan as a backup that's pretty darn good. Otherwise, what are you doing there? And there's this misconception that if you prepare, you're not going to be fluid and you're not going to know what you're doing. And it's just the exact opposite. It's the less you prepare, the more likely you're going to have an epic fail, in my opinion. At least that's what happened to me. I think I shot one thing once where I hadn't prepared, and I swear to God, even though there was like 3 people on set, I would never, ever do that again. And the other last secret I'll leave you with is that 90% of filmmaking is done in pre-production. When you show up on set, everyone should already know exactly what they're doing and move on and move forward, executing what you've discussed before you set foot on set. It's too late to do a lot of stuff on set other than react.
Yeah, I think it's the idea that you plan to be spontaneous, right?
Exactly.
You're creating so much that you can be spontaneous and react.
With a plan.
Yeah.
With a plan to fall back on.
Yeah.
Yeah, and your goal can't be like, I want to strike gold every time on accident. You know, like you know, someone who actually is a gold digger understands the process it takes to get the gold. You know, so when you're actually out there and you have a plan, you understand your story, it's stronger with your client that you have to push back on. When you had a plan and that had focus to it and it related to your story, everything can point back to that. So making decisions is easy whenever a client's like, hey, why don't you shoot that over there? And we can say, you know what, it doesn't line up with any of our focus of the story. It would bring no value. Or you can say, you know what, that's perfect. It gives you the opportunity to be spontaneous because you see the plan as a whole, and you can recognize that lines up with it.
Or do what Ridley Scott does and say, that's a wonderful idea, and woefully ignore it.
Okay, so on that train of thought, what are 3 things that you do to prepare for every shoot? And charging batteries doesn't count. Joe.
Did you say Joe?
I did, Joe.
All right. I don't know. I mean, I think there's a lot of things I do, but I think it's just one, like we already talked about, having a plan. And in a sense, for me, that's just going through everything in my head and almost overthinking it in the sense that I know our plan and focus so well that there's no way I will ever forget that plan for the rest of my life, which is bad. So I really am very pre-production oriented in that sense for preparing for my shoot. And I also like to spend time away from the actual gear and planning process right before the shoot and actually take some time for myself to go out. And I like to run a lot, and that's kind of my thing that I like to do, is go run with no headphones, no anything, and just go out there and hear the sounds of the city or nature or wherever I am to clear my head and be ready to be in the mode to shoot.
Matt, what are 3 things you do to prepare for a shoot?
I go to Starbucks first, get caffeinated. I tend to overpack because I'm that guy who gets to that spot and is like, oh crap, why didn't we just bring this? We have 2 hands. And so I like to kind of go through my list of gear and make sure that I bring, what I know I'll need, and then a couple bonus things that I might need, I might not. It's 2 things. I don't know. I guess I'm not a huge planner, but just making sure. Actually, here's one thing. I started printing stuff, which I know isn't very green, but like, man, trying to use my mobile to dig up that thing I had thought of 2 weeks earlier just isn't that efficient when your battery's down to 10% and you're in the jungle. So printing stuff, that'd be my 3rd thing.
Vincent, I know you got to get out of here soon, so I got one more question for you.
Sure.
What do you think the filmmaking industry will look like in 10 years? And what do you hope it will be in 10 years?
Oh, dear God. We'll all be shooting with our iPhones and living in augmented reality on Oculus Rift. God knows. I mean, it's going to get interesting, and just try to be part of it and try not to do what's been done before. Build upon, the masters of the past and study them, pay them homage, but try to do something that hasn't been done before. It's the best advice I have. God knows what's going to be in the future. I certainly couldn't have told you that where we'd be today when the iPhone came out, I think, 7 years ago. It's silly to try to predict the future, but just try to create it and set those ground rules. Now, before I go, I'm going to absolutely freak out my 5-year-old daughter, Eliana. If each one of you guys just says, "Happy birthday, Eliana," she will have no clue what's going on. But I'm capturing the screen. You guys want to go real quick and say "Happy birthday, Eliana"?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Happy birthday.
She's going to be utterly confused. Thanks, guys. Cheers. Bye-bye.
Ryan, what about you? What do you hope the filmmaking industry will look like in 10 years?
Oh man, I don't know. I'm extremely new to this, so I'm just under 4 years in. So and I feel like the difference between when I started, which was just because I happened to get a 5D, and now is just dramatic. I think it's really tough to think about where it's going to be in 10 years. But I mean, the beautiful thing is that we tell each other stories. We always have. We always will in some capacity. So that's what I love the most is finding stories that really kind of connect and help people feel something. And that, I'll ride the technology wave wherever it goes. But I think the fundamental thing is telling stories, and I don't think that's going to change.
I know you mentioned you talked a little bit on Story Heart's blog about that idea of every story has been told, but we need to hear them over and over again. Can you elaborate a little bit more right now on that idea?
Yeah, I mean, I think the obsession with finding the new thing, a new story to tell, like, is really not that. It's not that important because I think kind of all the great stories are very fundamental. They're very basic, and they've been true all through time. But what does change is specific culture, people, place, time, and so the reality is, like, you could tell a love story today that only exists for now because of kind of everything that's led up to how we are right now, right here. And so I think I think it's interesting. I'm sorry, I'm rambling a little bit, but I think this happens a lot when, like, a movie that was made 30 years ago suddenly gets popular again. Is that an entire new generation of people that are living in a new set of specific circumstances kind of connect to that timeless thing in that story, and suddenly go, dude, this guy gets me. Like this movie, they know what I'm going through, and I think that's a signal of kind of a story that is really touching on some really fundamental things. And I think that's what we should be worried about, not trying to find like the new way to tell this thing, to some new trick or something like that. It's really how can we be more fundamental.
Yeah.
Cool. All right, last question, all the way from Portugal. In one sentence, what makes you a filmmaker? Aaron.
To me?
Not Aaron, yes.
I mean, that's a tough question. It's just, I would say I'm a storyteller before I'd say I'm a filmmaker. We happen to do that through films as a profession, but for me, it's all story. I could tell a story through photos or any other form of art, and I would be just as fulfilled in doing it. Film just happens to be the medium that I'm really drawn to, and that we've, over time, kind of like, crafted and found our voice in.
How about you, Joyce?
I think Aaron just said exactly what I was gonna say. I mean, we said we tell stories, in every part of our life. We sit down at the dinner table and we tell a story. We go to camp and we tell a story, and we tell a story through film. And it just it's something that I connect with. It's something that we can easily share with a lot of people, and can make a lot of impact. And so I think it's a choice of how and what medium we tell stories with, but it's more about that than it is about video or film.
I think the best storytellers are the best listeners. The idea that we need to immerse ourselves in the story and allow it to flow through us.
Yeah, I think that's a hard question. What makes, why are you a filmmaker? Like, what is this could be a skill set, but that's not really what it's about. I think for me, it's just the emotion and the beauty of what it is that you're trying to create, and that's what really drives my passion is those two elements. And that all comes back to the story or the characters that you're working with or trying to really get across on the screen. So it's, I don't know, it's a weird question to answer.
It's interesting because when you small talk, bagging groceries, getting a haircut, that conversation always comes up. What do you do? And I think there's that thing that happens when you actually start calling yourself a filmmaker or a storyteller. And that's kind of what that question drives home for me specifically, is when does that actually happen? When do you feel comfortable being able to say and really believe in your heart that you are a filmmaker or that you are a storyteller? But you guys all touched on that. Well,
we had a ton of questions.
Yeah, I want to just first say thank you to everybody who sent questions. There was no way we'd be able to get through all of them, but we're going to do our best over the next couple of weeks to blog answers. We're going to get all of the panelists to answer as many questions as we possibly can to make sure that all of your questions go answered. But we're going to change it up right now.
So let's critique some films. If you haven't had a chance yet, you can review the films by going to the landing page on our website,
which is just storyandheart.com/hangoutwithheart.
And you can view them all there.
But I'm going to recommend that for now, just watch the critiques and then kind of go back afterwards so that and watch the film so you don't miss any of the critiques right now.
So our first film is all the way from Slovenia, from Luka, and it's called Wave of Life.
Who wants to hop on that critique?
I was going to say I have to take off to go back to sleep. I got to get up in 2 hours to continue my job tomorrow. So
Thank you
for having me on. Good chatting, guys, and good luck with the rest.
Good night, Joe.
Bye, Joe.
Cheers, Joe.
Which film is this one?
That's the pipe up about Waves of Life.
This is the surfing link, right?
Yeah.
I'll jump on. I gotta say, like, the images on that film were amazing. I mean, it was like every single shot was like, gosh, I wish I got that. Like, I wish it was me behind that camera. Genuinely, just beautiful film. Something that I kind of like wished would have happened is and this is really, this is all like a preference thing, but I wish the whole film felt like the intro felt. That guy is, he's building that surfboard. The way it's shot, the way the images flow together with the music was really gorgeous. And then it kind of like jumps into like the high energy, sort of like surf demo, which was great, but it felt a little linear with that. Whereas in my head, I see, kind of merging the story of the board essentially, where you see the guy, just sanding the board, and then you cut a guy riding that board on the wave. Like kind of going to where you're really telling how this board, it's more like the story about how it was created and how it connects these two people that are using it, the person who created it, the person who's using it. I felt like that would have been a direction that I think could have been really powerful story element to where you felt like you got something out of it that kind of connected the two. I don't know if you.
Cool.
What
thumbs up from Joey.
I was watching it and it was beautiful, but yeah, I thought there wasn't really a connection to the person making the board, or I didn't really know any of the people in the video. I just thought, man, this is beautiful shots. So I kind of wish I was a little more connected to who these people were, or what I read a little bit of the description on how they traveled all over to all these great places, but I didn't necessarily get that without reading it, which I kind of wish I would have known the backstory of that.
So some sort of voiceover or narration, or even just like nat sounds would have helped.
Yeah, and it had a little bit of sound design, but I think some nat sounds and then going less linear with how it was actually put together, to where you're sort of making those connections and seeing it, versus just the board gets made and then people are riding it.
Yeah. Anybody else?
I'll chime in. I think I agree that the visuals were absolutely amazing in that piece, and I agree. I wish we filmed that as well. It was completely epic. Like every shot was epic. But when I was finished watching that, I felt like there was I don't know. I mean, it's all an artistic approach. So there's no right or wrong. This is just maybe how I like to approach it. But it almost seemed like with all of those epic shots, there's such a huge opportunity to send this huge message or this huge feeling of emotion throughout the film. I don't know what exactly emotion they were trying to convey, but if there was another layer added, whether it was voiceover or interviews or some sort of layer, so you have the visuals, another sound design layer, boosted up sound design, and then some sort of voiceover that sent a message, a clear message that kind of guided us through and connected us to those visuals. I just think it could have just bumped it up a notch. That just could have sent a beautiful, inspiring message to somebody very clearly, like whether it's get up and go to this place, do this. It could be a million different things, but there's just a huge opportunity within that footage to take it to another level.
Yeah, I guess technically it was pretty cool that they incorporated all the different things that everybody's trying to do these days with you got helicopter, the drones, they got a little bit of time lapse, a little like this close-ups, the slow-mo, all that sort of stuff. It was really, really beautifully shot. But at the end of it, I did kind of think that I actually wondered. I went into the description wondering if it was a music video, because I thought that it was just strictly a music video for that song, a promotional video for that song or whatever. But it was a beautiful film for sure.
Cool. Okay, on to the next one. Brian from Washington, I believe it's pronounced Benny, a pre-wedding adventure, which follows a fiance
in the desert,
running into a jeep to the wedding chapel. Does anybody want to critique that one? Patrick, Joyce.
No, thank you.
Anybody? Matt? I'm looking for wedding filmmakers here.
I mean, I thought kind of like the last one, it was shot well. There was obviously a little more direct storyline, which is great. I guess I kind of ended that wondering what its end use was going to be and what it was kind of made for. Maybe it was a precursor to a reception or something like that, and maybe I didn't read the description. But, I mean, I thought the cinematography was good and good use of dialogue. I don't do a lot of dialogue pieces, so I always tend to think if you can execute dialogue at whatever level, kudos to you. So, yeah.
Anybody else? We got silence, radio silence.
I just one thing, technically, the one shot of the dad seemed out of focus, but that was, other than that, there was some cool stuff in there. Sure, like.
And what did that do for you, being out of focus?
What's that?
What did that do for you with that shot being out of focus? Like, did it pull you out of the story? What?
Yeah, maybe a little bit, So yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I guess if they could have shot that one over again, maybe shoot that shot again, But yeah, where did that film come from? Like, where's that person from?
Washington. So I don't know. Just north of us. Yeah.
Washington. And it was in Spanish, or was it? It was. What is that title?
Sorry, Aaron, Joey, we missed you there.
It was. I think it was spoken in English, but subtitles were Spanish.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it must have been like some like a bilingual situation.
I think for us, the biggest thing was believability. If this was a bride and a groom, or a groom and his father, I mean, kudos, because not every groom.
Getting your dad to act in a film with you.
I mean, right away, that's just phenomenal. But I do think that like the believability of the story was the biggest stretch for us, which was
we didn't see the fiance.
Yeah, connecting us to the fiance would have helped. And then just the situation being as realistic as possible were the two things that we, on our side, on Story Hack side, that we wanted to talk about. Yeah,
I think that was what stood out to me was I kind of like, I had to go back and watch and figure out why he was running through the desert again. It sort of, it was kind of like jarring, that it was like, here's a letter, now run through the desert. So I thought that part that was where it was like the believability of that situation. I do think the dialogue, it was actually pretty well delivered dialogue, for the most part.
Pretty crazy, right?
I actually forgot that part that he started in a tent in the desert. Now I really don't get it. But to Matt's point, I think maybe we don't know the backstory. Maybe if it was the groom and the bride's or his dad, maybe that is. I mean, maybe that is like a precursor to some their first dance or something. I don't know.
I definitely see Brian popping up here as far as commenting on that, so I'm sure there's some answers being displayed right now to those watching. Okay, we're going to move on to the last film. We have Cody from Indiana, Mutiny, which was a really interesting, very different film from the other two. Does anybody want to chat about that one?
We'll say something.
There you go, Patrick.
I think there's something that Heidi on our team says often that I think is so applicable to all of these, and I think that this one really stands out as an amazing example of that, and that's we should try to make art, not fashion. And I think for so many wedding filmmakers, we make fashion and music videos, and I think the first film was an example of an absolutely beautiful music video. But I think when we push ourselves to make art, to say something, to have it impact people, really connect with people, is when we can really transcend time and genres and conventions and make something much more timeless. And what I love about this piece is that it opens with a person, and it really starts connecting you to them, and we really dive into somebody. And you know, the sound design and the depth in it definitely stood out to me. I would wonder if we could connect more to one of the characters, build them out a little bit more, and get to know them a little bit more in that. But overall, I absolutely love the piece and how it felt like it was saying more, and much stronger than, you know, the subject matter so easy to take on as a music video. So I really appreciated how it had so much more depth.
Anybody else? Nobody. Come on, man. You got someone else. Who wants to talk about this guy?
We're talking about Mutiny right now, correct?
A boxing piece, sort of.
Yeah. So I will say this is. I say this with a very large grain of salt. I would say that you know, one of the. I would say my impression was I could kind of pick out 2 or 3 films. If I was talking with a filmmaker right now, I would say, you watched this one, and this one, right? I feel like maybe the influences haven't been digested fully. I saw some kind of specific reference images to a couple of other pieces that I've seen on Vimeo. That was my only thought, was that it felt like maybe a little bit more of an homage than kind of their own interpretation of that kind of piece, the kind of VO, like, you know, abstract narrative-driven piece.
How,
it was done. It was done well. I mean, I really do want to say it. I mean, it was done well for sure, and I definitely connected with what they were trying to say. I understood the story. I think there's another level that they could go to, and really, like, you know, find that thing kind of that they, you know, only they can say, if that makes sense.
We were talking about it before, and we were just kind of talking about. Well, one of the things we were mentioning was whether or not that audio, the audio track, the voice track there, the narration, whether or not that was created by them or whether it was found sound. Do you guys know what that is?
I mean, it sounded like an old record, but yeah, I don't know if that.
Yeah. It definitely sounded like an old record, but it would kind of be interesting if it was written by them, and that would kind of take it up a notch, you know, as its own.
I'd put money on it being scripted with audio processing.
Yeah. And in that sense, it was kind of cool, kind of interestingly repetitive, kind of like a you know, the Levi's Go Forth vibe, kind of that kind of has that you know, that ruggedness to it, of profound sound, and it was kind of cool.
Yeah, I mean, if they wrote that, that's pretty awesome if they wrote that, for sure. I mean,
yeah, and then technically, I guess if they just kind of added in a little bit more sound design instead of letting the music and the narration do all the work, and maybe they kind of like immersed a little bit more in the sound design. That would be cool. So,
I think, I mean, we chose that one specifically just because of how different it was, both in the application of narration and the visual. Like, it's dark, it's gritty, it's definitely different. So I definitely commend the filmmaker on that. I think that the one thing that pulled us out as filmmakers ourselves immediately was seeing the lights in the boxing scene, in the actual in the ring. Seeing the stands, the boards, the lights, it took it from being a really interesting atmospheric film to being produced, and you really felt that. So, I mean, I think our biggest critique was just trying to minimize that, and it's tough, especially when you want that harsh light in the boxing ring, and you're playing with shadows and all that kind of stuff to hide lights. But that's the one thing that pulled us out.
Yeah.
Anybody else have final words about Mutiny?
Yeah, I think you know, like, I pretty much had the same exact reaction as Ryan, where pretty quickly I could pick out a few films where it was like, it felt like someone, you know, doing, you know, someone singing Etta James or something, you know, like it was kind of like a reproduction of a voice. But I love the voiceover concept, what that story was, and how they put that to visual. I thought was really not. I thought it was a nice interpretation. I feel like in, you know, like if that filmmaker like keeps making films, in a year or two, like they'll probably look back and say, you know what, like what I have found in myself, like I probably would have done that completely differently now, which we probably all would. But I feel like they might be in the stages of sort of developing what it is that really clicks with them. And I think on a super technical side, some of the color grade, just kind of, I found myself kind of getting detached from the story just because certain scenes would just be so drastically different from each other. As far as your whites and blacks and those sort of things. I kind of feel like an environment shift between scenes, which I felt was kind of necessary for that kind of thing.
On the topic of being inspired and spreading that line between imitation and just inspiration, do you guys have any advice? Ryan and Aaron, you talked about it, but is there any advice that you guys can give to aspiring filmmakers where if you watch something and it moves you, to just use that as inspiration but not as motivation to want to replicate that exact thing?
I mean, I think it's a I don't mean to jump in, Film Lab dudes, but I think it's a matter of I think it's a matter of time, to be honest. It's kind of the more time that you put in, the longer you do it, the more you kind of like discover your thing, and the more then there's kind of a separation between your inspiration and the kind of thing that you create. I know for me, when I was starting out, a lot of times I wouldn't quite know how to say the thing that I had in my head, and so you kind of like go, well, they said it kind of cool, so I'll use those tools and try and say it that way. And as you kind of progress, and that's really where the kind of craft and the technique comes from, you kind of have the ability to kind of bring the things in your mind out without it kind of like having to borrow somebody else's process of doing that, if that makes sense.
I think on the topic of, what Grant always says, but the creativity is born out of the constraint, that's a good way to look at it. If, you can be very inspired by somebody else's work or something that you see, but then turn that into an opportunity and make that a constraint of not using the exact same tool or saying something the exact same way, but finding your own way and your own voice of saying it, I think is a great way to get around that.
I think like imitation is seeing something and being moved by it and then trying to reproduce it, whereas I think inspiration is seeing something, being moved by it, and trying to take the essence of what it was that moved you and using that to push you forward. Right, and so trying to dive deeper and going, I really love this film, but like, why? What is it that's really, stirring something inside of me? And taking that underlying, whatever that is, that essence, and allowing that to push you in the stories that you tell.
Mm.
Aaron and Joey?
I would say that, especially starting out and trying to understand how to tell stories and how to make a video or film that people can be moved by. It's hard when you're first starting because you can see something and be really moved by it, but really you don't know. Like you don't know, hey, how do I tell this story and make people feel the same way? I don't know. I'm gonna try what has been done and what is proven, and I'm gonna do that, and because I know that works, it worked with me, and I think it's just a part of growing. It's a part of practice. I always say filmmaking is a practice. It's not something that we're like this great filmmakers, but we're just always getting better. We're always learning that tool or that way that we could say something or deliver a line or deliver a message that is impactful. But I'm not even going to say we've made it. I think it's just an ongoing process, and I think taking from things that you see. I mean, I think there's poor ways of doing that and not so poor ways of doing that. But I don't know. I think, especially starting out, I think it's a process, and I don't know. I'm not gonna.
Did you say that it's part of growing, or it's part of growing? Because I thought you said it was part of growing, like you two working together, and I think that's another big,
We're growing big time over here.
I would add something. This is kind of a little bit of a different bit of advice, and I agree with everything everyone is saying. But at the same time, if we're delivering a message to people that are just starting out, I would honestly say not really worry about that too much. They're with the internet nowadays, and we are inundated with just amazing content every single day, every second of the day. There's so much good content out there that it can be a little intimidating. And if you're a young filmmaker starting out, I would say just do something. If you're looking for that creative voice that is your own voice, don't try to do it immediately. Just start doing something. Do it. And I think that voice will come over time. But I wouldn't be, don't be like, oh, they've done this, and they've done this, and somebody's done this, and this, and this. Like, you'll be scared to death, and you'll never pick up a camera. So I think, personally, I would say if you're just starting out, just freaking do something. And get out there and start learning your craft and learning your skill, and that voice will come over time.
It's so true. I mean, imitation is a natural part of child development, right? It's an actual phase that we go through. And I think that that's a natural phase, and it's such a huge part of growing in anything we do. We take on something new, and we imitate first and understand it before we can be inspired to try and grow and try and push in it. So I totally echo that. Then, like, embrace that, but just know when it's time to move on and push yourself further, and don't allow yourself to live in that too long.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I would say, to like bring it back to Cody's film, which is kind of what started this discussion, in my opinion, that's exactly true about this film. Is you know, like, there's something there, like, keep pushing. You know what I mean? Keep looking for your voice in that process, because it's there for sure. You know.
Yeah.
Matt, do you have any last words?
No.
He's like, I got it.
Well said, everybody. Well said.
Well, I mean, to Dan and Dana's point, as far as just getting out there and doing that, that's one of the largest things that we've got planned. As Storying Heart is giving people an excuse to just go out there and tell the stories they love. Because I think that's what's holding a lot of people back from growing as filmmakers. It's just that little push to just stop thinking all in your head, stop worrying about what people think, stop worrying about imitation, and just go out and tell the stories that you need to tell. So we're getting close to being done tonight. I just want to thank everybody for being here. Before we head out, we have a couple of just last minute things, including some giveaways, so don't leave yet. We are super excited that filmmaker applications for Storying Heart and to join the community have just gone live. So if you head to storyingheart.com now, you can apply to be a Storying Heart filmmaker and to join this community. We have a ton planned.
As Justin pointed out earlier, we have a lot of really cool things in store. This is just the tip of the iceberg. The things that we come up with on a daily basis. There's a massive list.
Yeah, so you're going to be hearing from us over the next couple of weeks as we unveil more and more of what we've been cooking up the last year.
And if you go to the website while you're on the landing page, you can sign up for our news list.
Yep, so Storyteller News every Monday. We send out a bunch of links to just help you grow as a filmmaker and a storyteller. And the last thing is, if you have a bunch of friends who are filmmakers and who find value or are going to find value in what we've just done, make sure you share this Hangout with filmmakers listening.
It's going to be available on the page as a recording, as well as there's going to be some other resources, et cetera, et cetera.
And last but not least, we want to take a moment to thank all of our friends without whom this event would not have been possible. Lens Per To Go, Rode, Kessler, Marmoset, Stillmotion, and Vincent's Tour Directing Motion. So we've got a bunch of giveaways to give away right now. So here we go.
We have two 250 gift certificates, two $250 gift certificates from the lovely people of our Lens Per To Go that they donated.
Yep.
And we have two winners.
So there you go. Who are they?
Who are Oliver Assis and Kim Perfinger.
There it is. Boom. Up next, we have one Rode Blimp. That's going to Lauren Major.
How about that?
Sure.
$290.
200 Story First documentary.
Yes. Story First documentary trainings from Stillmotion. Lindsay Nance and Daniel Crow.
There we go. That's an online course from Stillmotion. That's really exciting. We have two $200 Marmoset gift cards. Marmoset, our music licensing company of choice. Great people. So we have two $200 gift cards. First one's going to L. Michelle Lanier.
And 80 Staub.
And our last but not least, the grand prize, which is one Kessler Stealth Slider. You're gonna have to wait for that one. We're gonna let you know how you feel in that one coming up. And
that's it. if you'd like to watch this event again or share it with your friends and fellow filmmakers, the recording of this Hangout will be on the website,
which is just storyandheart.com/hangoutwithheart, which is for a lot of you guys what you guys are watching this on right now. And like we said at the beginning of the night, we've got something special, which is the Kessler Crane. And we're going to give that out to the person who shares this event the most creatively over the next 3 days. Get creative. Think about how you can share this with filmmakers who are going to find value in the last hour and a half of conversation, and we're going to pick the winner. Make sure you use the hashtag #HangoutWithHeart when you share it socially.
And make sure you check back on the site over the next couple of days to find the link for all the resources that we mentioned earlier, as well as more of the questions that were submitted for tonight's Hangout.
We didn't get to anything.
Us providing answers for that.
Just because our 90 minutes is up, well, it's actually a little bit over. Doesn't mean the learning has to end.
So thank you for all of you who participated, everyone who joined us, the filmmakers, the people who chimed in and tuned in just to watch it. And of course, we hope you have a great rest of your Tuesday night.
Cool. Great. See you, everybody.
Peace.